All right, for real this time, you are listening to La Molly and Snow Cone here on 104.7 The Drop. Thank you so much for joining us, and it is now that time for Community Corner. We are joined by Hanna Simmons, who is the Development Manager at International Rescue Committee of Denver, whose mission is to provide resources for refugees, asylees, victims of human trafficking, survivors of torture, and other immigrants. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an honor to be here today.
Yes, we're so happy to have you. So you have a very big job.
Right. Big,
you
big
could say
job.
that.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what this work means to you?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, I was raised in Germany, born and raised in Germany, and I came to the United States in 2005 as part of my study abroad for my first master's degree. And I have always been incredibly fascinated by different cultures and countries and nationalities, right? My parents instilled a tremendous sense of curiosity in us in traveling to different countries and engaging with different nationalities and cultures. And so working for the International Rescue Committee in Denver is special because it's a very multifaceted and diverse environment. I mean, we work with people from all different countries, all different cultures, all different religious backgrounds. And I just feel very lucky to be in a situation where I can learn so much from different people and see these different perspectives, you know? So
Yeah. Well, we're lucky that someone like you is not only just doing it, you know, in a vacuum, but someone with that much passion and with that much just like emotion behind it.
Thank you.
They really see the potential and they really see the impact of the change, because the stuff that you're doing, like, you really provide in a lot of different ways, like not just like, you know, with food and water, but like with emotions and just really like providing for them and giving them a chance to growth. And what I was curious about is just like, I feel like a lot of people coming in to just like the crisis or whatever, they might not know how to navigate it because there's no like rule book or anything like that. So like, what if they know someone who's in a crisis, or if you see something with your own eyes, like, is there any way that they can be just like guided towards your foundation?
Well, you have to distinguish between the International Rescue Committee as a big entity and national entity, right? It's an international organization that was started in 1933 by Albert Einstein and his fellow country person, and a very small group of humanitarians, and has since then grown to 50 different countries, right? So we're represented in 40 different countries worldwide.
Wow.
It's a big organization, and
Absolutely.
The International Rescue Committee as a big entity focuses on humanitarian aids services, right? Humanitarian relief. So we're talking about crisis, war, famine, starvation, these types of things, right? But then you also have to see that there is a national level of this. So there is the International Rescue Committee in Denver, right here, Bel Air Street, not far from here, right? There are 29 offices nationally here that focus on, you know, a little bit different programs, but overall focus mainly on what you said, refugee resettlement, right? Survivors of tortures, victims of human trafficking, immigration, right? And so we pride ourselves in offering wraparound services. Right? You can imagine somebody coming here after a long, long time in the refugee resettlement system. Some people wait for 10, 20, 25 years. And after an excessive vetting process that takes usually up to 2 years as well, with 8 federal agency background checking and biometric printing and several interviews, 3 rounds of interviews.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're checked against 8 different databases, on the federal level. And then they arrive here in Denver, right, as one option. And so they're here in Denver, and they pretty much arrive with a backpack, right? Yeah. So then we at the IRC in Denver have the responsibility, technically, to help them, walk them, support them in becoming self-reliant. And so our range of programs is massive. We have everything from housing programs, because they need to find housing. And I mean, Denver's situation. Yeah. Housing is not easy. Employment services, school enrollment, education services. I mean, a lot of, pre-digital reading, so not necessarily capable of using a computer, which you need to use in order to access healthcare services. To enrolling your children in school, we have a legal system, a legal program that is always very high in demand. So we offer really everything you can think of to help and support these people becoming self-reliant and ultimately walking from harm to home.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That is amazing, yeah.
So you said that it can take 10, 20 years for people waiting to go through this asylum process. What do they do in the meantime?
So the United Nations Refugee Association Agency just released a new article in new statistics in June saying that currently we have 120 million people plus that are forcibly displaced.
Oh my God.
120 million people. Think about this number. This is pretty much the population of Japan.
Yeah.
You know?
Full nations.
And Japan is the 12th biggest country in the world. So this is how many people are currently on the move in transition, right? Because they had forcibly displaced, not because they wanted to. Mm-hmm. Of these 120 plus million, 43 million are refugees. So are under the banner, under the title of refugees, which means they had to flee because of persecution, right, of war, of natural disaster. They had no other choice. Of those 43 million, at least 40% of children, which is a big percentage, right? And when you ask about where do they go, well, they leave their place, their home, their place of residence because they have to. Often they end up in refugee camps. Of those 43 millions we're talking about, a very small, a minuscule percentage is actually resettled, right? So the president determines in the presidential determination how many people come to the United States every year. And for this year, this number is 125,000. So 43 million compared to 125,000 people. That sounds like a lot in the first go, but it really isn't if you do the math, right?
Yeah.
So people wait wherever they land in refugee camps or wherever else until somebody from the UN Refugee Agency identifies them as one of the most vulnerable refugees, right? Several reasons why. Having been there forever, being under imminent threat, who cares, right? There is a reason why they get identified. Then they go through this excessive vetting process that we've talked about, right, which can take up to 2 years, usually takes up to 2 years, and then they're resettled here. So this is a lengthy process, right? And the living conditions before they actually arrive here are not ideal, as we can imagine.
Wow.
Yikes. Yeah, so it's basically like those camps we were seeing along the border. That's what I'm imagining.
That is one. I mean, other refugees decide to stay with relative in other countries for a while. Full families. I mean, we resettle a lot of families together. We try to keep them together, right? But we have a legal department that works on reunification applications, right? But when I say 5, 10, 15, 20 years before you're even identified as a vulnerable person, as a vulnerable refugee that needs to be resettled, that's not an overstatement. And then people think, then they get here and everything is handed to them and they have an easy life. But that's when actually the real work begins because due to our funding, they have 90 days to become self-reliant.
Wow.
So 90 days to get back on their feet, right? We walk side by side alongside with them for up to 5 years because that's when you usually can apply for citizenship, right? But in those first 90 days, after you have finally made it here, you have to secure housing, which that's why we have a housing team. You have to find a job, which is not easy if you don't speak English or if you have skills that might not be recognized here. We have a ton of people arriving that actually used to be dentists or doctors or engineers in their home country, but their credentials are just not
It just doesn't match.
Right, so they start again from scratch as a dental hygienist or assistant or something, and they are required to take the first job that's offered to them. So that's why you do end up often as a highly qualified person. Of course, our employment team tries to find something well-matched, but you might end up as driving Uber for a while or working at the airport or, those types of jobs.
Yeah. Wow. So you guys have a lot of different sort of impact areas, I guess you could say. You work with, like you said, economic well-being, education, empowerment, health, safety. Do you start working with them once they've been identified, or do you work with them beforehand?
No, once we get the call, you will be expecting a family of 5 or 3. On Wednesday, we start working from there. So we start working with, of course, we have some say in the numbers, how many can we resettle? I mean, this year we have already resettled over 450 people, I think, and we're expecting another 100 people before the end of the fiscal month, which is October 1st. So in the next month, practically another 100 people. So we have some say in the numbers that we think as an organization we can handle. There are 8 big resettlement agency, like national resettlement agency in the United States, 29 IRC offices. So then we get this number, and then we get a call that tells us, the people are arriving at this time, or an email, whatever it is, at this time at the airport, and then our work starts, right? So we need to find somebody who picks people up from the airport. We need to find people that takes them to either their housing, if we have secured it, or temporary housing.
Right.
We need to furnish this apartment because there's usually nothing in it. So we have a big warehouse where people can drop off donations, gently used furniture, and other items. And think about it. You need everything from a toothbrush to a cooking pot to a bed,
forks,
to a blanket, forks, every single thing, from a deodorant to a razor, like whatever you can think of, right?
Yeah.
You don't have. And you don't necessarily have the money to start buying these items, right? So this is where we come in. This is where a lot of our volunteers support us and our interns support us in setting up these houses. We have an amazing volunteer. Judy is her name. She is single-handedly credited for being responsible for having at least one item in every refugee resettled household in Colorado, because what she does is she goes to estate sales and she sees what's left over and what people didn't buy, and she asks if she can have it. And then she drops it up at our warehouse, and then it goes from there. I mean, you need to find a job. You need to enroll your kids in school. Your kids might not have the ability to speak English yet. You need to do all your health screens. Health screens check. A lot of people have experienced tremendous trauma, right? So that's why we have a mental health program, Survivors of Torture, which help people that have been involved in torture. And then the work starts, your legal work, right? I mean, you need to get your permits right. You need to get all of that stuff. You need to eventually apply for permanent citizenship or a green card and those things. So it is a big field. As you said, there are tons and tons of different ways people can support this field.
So how can people get involved if they're interested in either learning more or maybe volunteering with you guys?
I always try to say, or always like to say, that everybody has something to give. There's nobody who cannot give anything. And yes, there's some people that prefer to give us monetary donations, which is great. I mean, a donation goes a long way. We can use it for wherever it is needed most, right? But there are also people that like to give time, which I find just as valuable, right? As I just mentioned, we have so many programs. So if you have time and want to pick people up from the airport and take them to their housing, if you want to teach people how to use a bus system, how to read a bus map, if you want to join somebody to go and open a credit card, right? If you want to help people with school enrollment, there is so many. If you want to work in our housing setups, right? We always utilize volunteers for our housing setups and want to build some bunk beds together, or in our warehouse. There's so many ways you can help because we have so many different departments. I mean, a very big need for us is always pro bono attorneys, so we're always looking for qualified pro bono attorneys who can support us in our legal processes. Always looking for great interns. I mean, there are a lot of people with amazing skills out there, right? And then some people say, yeah, it's great, but it's not enough. We have a co-sponsorship group where you technically, in quotations, adopt a family. And then when the family arrives, you support us in the services that we usually provide, right? Freeing up some capacity for us. Doing exactly those things, showing them where's the halal supermarket, which is not easy. How do you go shopping in a country? And then the last way, not the last way, but another way you can get involved is by joining our events. We host a multitude of events. We're just starting a new series called Community Creations, where our staff and community supporters host practically painting classes or crafting classes, and all your ticket sales, all the tickets you buy for this, you learn new skills, you have some fun, you hang out with some new people, you learn a little bit about the IRC, and all the ticket purchase, prices go to our organization. So you can join our bike drive and donate a bike that you no longer need. You can buy us some or send us some school supplies that you bought extra for your kids. You're moving and you no longer need that couch set. Well, we need it, So there are unlimited ways that you can join us, support us, that don't involve writing a check or making a donation even. So, of course, we appreciate that tremendously as well.
How can people get in touch with you or your organization specifically? Like, do you guys have like a website portal or social media where they can directly go from the phone right to you guys?
Yeah, all of the above. So we have, of course, an international presence, and then our national presence, and then our local presence, which is rescue.org/Denver. So rescue.org is the overall, and then /Denver. Then we have a Denver-specific Instagram and Facebook page. So just the International Rescue Committee in Denver, right, on both of those. And then you can just call our office, email somebody at the office, and we'll connect you. We'll find the right person in the right department. And the beauty about such a multifaceted environment, so many different areas, is we'll find something for you to do. I mean, we now have a gardening program.
Oh,
it's called New Roots.
Cool.
It's supposed to help the refugee community to connect, right?
Oh, I love that.
And it's supposed to also alleviate food insecurity. They have a very tight budget to work with, right? And so planting a couple extra things and being able to sell those at a farmer's market is something great. So, even if you don't want to do any of the driving, any of the paperwork, any of the sitting, you can garden with us.
Wow.
So come garden with us. Help us with the plots. Tell us about watering systems. Any single skill you have can be utilized.
Awesome.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. We've been chatting with Hanna Simmons of International Rescue Committee of Denver. If you missed any of the contact information, just send us a text 303-893-3767. We'll send that over to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.